80 million. I like it.
Thank you. Have a seat. Have a seat. Thank you. Thank you. You know, one of the most critical parts of being successful in building and growing a business is the ability to hire the talent. I know so many people who struggle with this topic of how do I find the right people, how do I hire the right people, how do I keep the right people. I run into it all the time, and most of us have had the experience of hiring somebody. If you're in business and you've hired people before, had employees, you've had the experience, like I have, of hiring somebody, and man, you're excited. And they get there, and they're there for about 60 or 90 days, and all of a sudden, they're not working out anymore. Anybody ever had that experience? Yeah, most of us have had that. It takes about 60 or 90 days. Now, let me ask you a question. When you hire somebody, what you typically do is you say, look, here are all the skills that I think I need. And you make a list of them, and then you interview, and you hire to the skills. And then about 60 or 90 days later, this person that you hired isn't working out. And my question is this: is the reason they're not working out because they forgot the skills? No. I mean, if I get ready to hire, for example, a personal assistant, which I've done, I go out and I say, okay, I need somebody who's organized. I need somebody who can help me keep my calendar, help keep me on schedule, can answer the phone for me, that literally can help be my voice, and respond to emails and telephone calls and set up meetings and do some typing and do some filing and all that kind of stuff. And then about 60 or 90 days goes by and I look up and I go, this isn't working. This isn't working. And then I say, well, is it because they forgot how to answer the phone? Is it because they forgot how to be organized? Is it because they don't know how to keep my calendar? Is that the problem? No, it's really not. We make a mistake when it comes to hiring people, because oftentimes we hire to get somebody's skills, and the reality is it's a little more complex than that. I think what we ought to do is we ought to say, look, what are the outcomes, or what are the results? The outcomes or the results that I want to have achieved. That's number one. I mean, the reality is we're not hiring people just so we can get their skills. We're hiring people because we got to get outcomes. We got to get results. And the next, if you're going to get outcomes and results, then there's going to have to be some task that have to be performed. Somebody's going to have to do something. And now the question is, if you want certain outcomes or results, and there's certain tasks have to be performed in order to get these outcomes and results, then the question is, what kind of skills does that person need? And that's an entirely different way of going about the process. I think we too often we hire for skills instead of hire for outcomes. Because at the end of the day, it's all about outcomes, isn't it? It is for me. I mean, I'm all about how do I get the outcomes or results I want? What are the tasks that need to be performed? And then what skills are required in order to perform those tasks so that I can have that outcome? Now, there's a missing link that most people don't ever see. And I'm going to talk a little bit in this particular segment about a missing piece that kind of colors this whole thing. It's like a skin that lays over all. It doesn't negate anything that I've talked about, but it's a skin that covers it. And I'll be talking about that, but I'm going to give you a hint right now. The skin is called rules of the game. That's the skin. That's the critical part that most people miss, is they hire for skills that instead of outcomes, and then they wind up with people who aren't working out, and part of that has to do with not really understanding the importance of rules of the game. Another word for rules of the game is culture. It's the culture of your business. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in this particular segment in our time together. when you think about a business and growing a business, you know that businesses go through stages. And one of the earliest stages, in fact, the earliest stage of a business is, you have an idea. And then the business goes through this, tumultuous time, and it finally gets to a niche. And the next stage that you're going to get to is the stage of leverage. And leverage simply means, and this right here, by the way, is where most businesses fail, and it's where most businesses get stuck. Because what got you from startup to niche has nothing to do with getting you from niche to leverage. So leverage means you're leveraging other people's time, other people's resources, other people's money. But for the most part, leverage means, hey, I got to build a team. Somehow I got to get a group of people around me that allows me to be more efficient so I can go do the things that are most important. In other words, one of the questions I'm always asking myself is, what is it that I and only I can do? Now, some people say, well, look, I mean, if I own a business and I'm doing the bookkeeping and the business, then I got a $15 an hour job, which is the bookkeeping, and I got a $100 an hour job, which is the business end of the stick. And so some people will tell you, look, you should hire, anything that is cheaper than what you can produce in an hour. Does that make sense? Yeah, and I'm in favor of that idea, but bottom line, the goal for me is I got to identify what I and only I can do. And one of the things that I did years ago is I said, you know what, my time is worth $5,000 an hour. And that's what I charge, by the way, to anybody that wants to hire me to do personal one-on-one is $40,000 a day. And I got 6 or 8 people every month that I work with at that kind of rate. I got a couple people who've hired me for an entire year. They want access to me all year long. That price is $250,000, and I got people that pay it. I don't know why, but they do. Apparently, they think they get their money's worth, and I think they do. I mean, what I'm able to do is help people make distinctions. So I'm looking for not only what is it that I can delegate to other people? That's really delegation. And then part 2 is I'm looking for what can I and only I do. What is it that Keith can do that nobody else can do? In all of our businesses, what is that? Including the teaching world, which is one of the reasons I'm so grateful that I have such a great partner and boss. I work for Sandy. In the teaching world, people don't believe that. They say, oh, no, Keith, you're really the power. I'm not the power. I'm the talent. I am the talent. The thing that I and only I can do is learn and teach. That's it. Sandy can run the business, and she does a great job. So she's my boss, and I keep trying to figure out what I got to do to get a raise, right? If you're going to go from a job or like the S quadrant, into the B quadrant, that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in cash flow quadrant, if you're going to make that transition, then what's going to be required is that you leverage on some resources, and leveraging on other people's time and effort is critical. The reality is what that means is that if you want to grow, you're going to have to figure out how to find the talent, how to keep the talent, how to promote the talent, how to keep them excited, how to keep them engaged in your business. When I look around, this is a remarkable statistic. 8% of the population is unemployed. 74% of the population is unhappy at their job. Do you know why most employees are unhappy? They hate their boss. They've done this study 1,000 times, and what they keep finding out is that most employees are unhappy at their work, and one of the reasons is because they hate their boss. They've done another study, literally thousands of times since 1949. They take a list of 10 things to employers, and they say to employers, bosses, owners, they say rank these 10 things in order of importance to your employees. And bosses, employers always say the number one and most important thing to our employees is how much money they make. And then they take the same exact list to employees, and they say to employees, all right, now, we want you to tell us what is most important to you in your being happy. And do you realize that out of the thousands of times that they've run this study, how much money the employee makes is never ranked higher than number 5? That's the highest it's ever ranked. The number one most important thing to employees that determines whether or not they're happy is whether or not they feel appreciated. Has anybody said good job? Has anybody said thanks? You know what the number 2 most important thing is? To employers, the second most important thing they think to employees is, well, what kind of benefits? How much time off? How much sick leave? Are we paying for their health insurance? All that kind of stuff. They then go to employees and say, all right, we understand that being appreciated is number 1. What's the second most important thing? You know what employees have said? This is not true once. They've run this study 1,000 times since 1949. The second most important thing every single time, without exception, is, do I know where I fit? Do I know where do I make a difference? Do I know what I'm doing that's contribute? Do I even know what the overall plan here is and how what I'm doing fits in? Because the reality is you think about most employees. I've been an employee. That's how I started my career. And I have employees, and I've done this with them. I go around telling people all the time, good job, good job. Not when they're doing a bad job. When they're doing a bad job, I tell them they're doing a bad job. That's part of the culture that I've created. If I see that you're doing something good, I'm going to pat you on the back. And if I see that you're not doing something good, I'm going to correct you. I'm going to let you know, because I think I owe it to you to be that honest. Most people with their employees, one of the reasons they struggle is because you get what you tolerate. You get what you tolerate. And instead of calling it tight, which is what we should be doing, and saying what needs to be said, which is what we should be doing, what we do is we tolerate mediocrity, we tolerate average, we tolerate, people kind of doing it okay, but then if I correct them, it might hurt their feelings. I just look at that and say, well, no wonder you're getting lousy work. The reason you're getting lousy work is because you're tolerating lousy work. I mean, somebody told me years ago, exceptions are the enemy of excellence, and I agree with that. Exceptions are the enemy of excellence, and a lot of times what we're tolerating is exceptions as opposed to demanding excellence. So this whole idea of what do I got to do to leverage off of other people? I think finding the talent, people say, well, where do you find the talent? I got to tell you, I mean, the best source of talent for us in our businesses, and this has been true over the last, 30 years, is we tend to hire from our competition. That's the very best source of talent, because what I'm doing is I'm hiring somebody who's unhappy where they are, and if I'll simply be nice to them, tell them I appreciate them, and let them know how they fit into the overall deal, they're going to be happy. That's true with everybody. So I love finding, talent from leveraging. That's leverage, finding the talent. I love finding talent from the competition. Look, you guys have all heard the saying, birds of a feather flock together. And it's true. Birds of a feather. Runners hang out with runners. Smokers hang out with smokers. Partiers hang out with partiers. Crack cocaine addicts hang out with crack cocaine addicts. You're not going to find a crack cocaine addict dating the church lady. That ain't going to happen. Religious people hang out with religious people. Runners hang out with runners. Learners hang out with learners. Birds of a feather flock together. And so a lot of times I'll go to my employees and say, look, do you like working here? And they say, yeah. I say, good. Who do you know? Because, they know some other people that might be a good candidate. But by far, the very best source that I've found over the last 30, 35 years is I'll go to our competition. And I will hire from my competition, because now I'm hiring somebody that knows the technical part of what to do. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to, take somebody who's never been to medical school and teach them how to do open heart surgery. That's not what I'm doing. I want to make sure that they have demonstrated competence. Write that word down. write that word down. If you're going to hire somebody, for goodness sakes, let's make sure that we're hiring somebody that has demonstrated competence. I think you can go to suppliers and vendors and associations. Another word for that is kind of network. I've had some success with that over the years, but not nearly as good as asking my existing employees and then, looking at my competition and finding out who out there has demonstrated competence. If you know how to do the job, I can teach you the rest of it. I can create a culture where you have an opportunity to flourish. One place to find the talent is newspapers and advertising and monster.com, and I'm good with those. If those work for you and that's the best way to find the talent, but there's way more than newspapers these days. There's a lot of sources for finding the talent. I think once you find somebody that you want to interview, I think there's some big time mistakes that people make when they're hiring people. I think number one mistake is that, as employers and owners, we tend to interview very poorly. I think mistake number two is we tend to hire somebody kind of like us, right? Because birds of a feather, right? So we kind of like people who are like us. I'm going to talk more about each one of these. We interview poorly. We hire somebody that's kind of like us. We hire way too fast. And when we hire, we lack clarity. And when I say lack clarity, what I'm really talking about is we lack clarity on, we hire for the skills but not for the task. And we don't hire for the outcomes. And we don't have rules of the game, which is the skin that covers this whole thing. So I'm going to talk about each one of these 4 hiring mistakes because I think there's some very valuable lessons in each one of them. Mistake number 1, which is, we interview poorly. I think the mistake here is that we usually wind up trying to sell the prospect on us instead of being the buyer. We're the buyer, and when you're the buyer, you're a little more discriminating. But you think about the interviews that you've either conducted, as being the interviewer, or think about the interviews that you've been in where you were the interviewee, the person that was maybe being hired. And more often than not, the interviewer is busy trying to sell the interviewee on why they should join the business. And I think that's a mistake. I think we should be a buyer, not a seller. We should be discriminating. We should say, you know what, I don't have to take this person. One of the best questions I've ever asked myself when I'm interviewing somebody, and I don't know whether to hire them, this is a world-class question. So get ready to write it down. I ask myself, if I don't hire this person and they go to my competition, how would I feel about that? You talk about a good litmus test. You talking about keeping yourself from doing something stupid in hiring people. Just ask yourself the question, how would I feel if this person, if I didn't hire them and they went to work for my competition, how would I feel about that? And if you are, I don't care, chances are you don't have the right person, particularly in a senior position. In a senior position, you definitely want to have people that you want working for you as opposed to having that talent and expertise working for your competition. I think another part of interviewing poorly is that most of us are interviewed instead of are interviewing. So we let our interviewee, if I'm the boss and I'm interviewing somebody that I want to hire, we let them kind of direct the conversation, and we typically don't do a very good job of the interviewing process, and a lot of times that happens because we don't know the questions to ask. I'm going to give you 5 world-class questions that if you're going to be interviewing somebody, ask these questions. If you're going to be interviewed, prepare for these questions. And even if you're being interviewed and not asked these questions, try to work them into the conversation because they're exceptionally powerful. One of the things I ask people when I'm interviewing them is, and we got hundreds of employees that work for us, I ask this question, what do you know about us? In other words, I want to find out does this person that I'm talking to, do they care enough to actually sit down, go to the internet, find out anything about us? Have they ever driven past our businesses? Have they ever even bothered to look us up and see what we do or how we do it? Or are they looking at me as kind of the milk wagon, right? Am I like the chuck wagon? I mean, I'm just their next paycheck. And the reality is I get rid of a lot of scumbags, a lot of bad potential employees just by asking this question, because if you don't have the gumption or the fortitude or the foresight to go out and do a 10-minute check on who we are and what we do and what we're about, I got to tell you, I don't have much use for you. If that's all you're bringing to the table is you need a paycheck and you're looking to me as your sugar daddy, we got a problem. So I love this question of, good, what do you know about us? Another question is, what are 5 things you love to do at work? What are 5 things that you love to do at work? So I'm beginning to look for, what are their strengths? I don't like asking people what they're good at. The reality is they'll probably lie to you. But if I ask you, what do you love doing, you're likely to tell me. And the reality is people love doing what they're good at. Is that true? Don't you love doing what you're good at? I do. The things I'm really, really good at, I love to do. So if somebody says, hey, Keith, what are your strong suits? Now I'm going to start making it up. But if somebody says, hey, Keith, what do you love doing? It's more likely that I'm going to be a little more authentic and real. I'm going to ask, what are the things you don't like to do at work? What are the things you hate? Not what are you not good at? What do you not like doing? Because the reality is most people don't like doing the things they're bad at. So it's another way to kind of get to, hey, what am I getting here? I think the 4th question that I love is, what do you think the 5 most important things for you to be successful in this job? Boy, you talk about a world-class question. Ask the person you're interviewing, what do you think are the 5 most important things for you to be successful in this job? If I hire you, what do you think the 5 most important? Their answers will literally surprise you. And number 5, the 5th question is, what are some of the things your current employer could do differently to be more successful? I like this question because it kind of tells me whether or not they're engaged or engageable. It kind of tells me whether or not the person is thinking about, what needs to happen here in order to improve. And most people that you're going to be hiring have got, some experience someplace. I'm going to ask them questions like, why are they leaving where they are and some of that kind of stuff. But these 5 questions are exceptionally powerful when it comes to this idea of thinking about hiring people. What's the interview process look like? Mistake number 2. This is the second biggest mistake that business owners make or interviewers make, and that is hiring someone like you. I mean, the reality is we like people who are like us. We like to surround people with people who are like us. And if you want to be successful in your business, what you're trying to do is hire people not like you. You're trying to hire people that bring something to the table that you don't bring. That's what we're trying to do. So I want people that are better, that are smarter, that are faster, that have different skills and interests and talents and different personality types even. I mean, there's some people in this room who are addicted. I mean addicted to speed. In fact, it's not even so much speed as it is the outcome. I mean, there's some people in here that, boy, if I had to sit and think about it for too long, I couldn't do it. You're the kind of people who, if you get a new DVD player for Christmas, you're going to open the box and there's going to be some instructions in the box. And you're going to look at those instructions and go, man, why are they killing trees on this? And you're going to set the instructions aside and you're going to get to going on, plugging in the wires, and you're going to kind of just figure it out. But you're not going to look at the diagrams, are you? I mean, do you know who I'm talking about? There's some people in here that are like that. And then when the little 12 starts flashing, the clock starts flashing 12, 12, 12. You know what your solution is? Duct tape. That's what your solution. You put a piece of duct tape over the 12. So there's some people that are addicted to the outcome. I mean, let's not spend a lot of time figuring this thing out. Let's make the decision and we'll move on. You know, if it's the wrong decision, good, we'll fix it later. There's other people, and you know who you are, there's other people that are all about the feelings. Let me make sure that I don't do anything that's going to hurt anybody else's feelings. I want to make sure that everybody's doing okay. And these are people that are all about the emotions. And then there's other people that hate risk. They hate risk, but they're very analytical. You know who you are. There's some people in here that when they get that new DVD player, man, if the instructions are the first thing they're going to look at, not only are they going to look at it, but they're going to read it. And then when they read it, they're going to follow the instructions. And if, like at Christmas time, if you're putting together a wagon, if you're one of these kind of people who is all about the details and very analytical, when you get all done putting together the wagon, there will be no leftover parts. Whereas you go to the first group, who's all about getting it done as quickly as they can, you're going to have 2 screws, a nut, and a bolt left over. And you know what you're going to think? Man, that manufacturer is really smart. They included some extra parts just in case. Am I right? So the analytical people are going to be all about the details, and you got to have those kind of people. They're critical to have. And it's good to have the people that are all about making a decision. And then there's other people who, their main thing is about belonging. It's about, let me get a consensus. If I can just get a consensus of what everybody wants to do, then we can figure out the right decision. So there's some people then that are all about consensus. They're all about getting agreement. They're all about let's get everybody's opinion and then figure out the lowest common denominator. I mean, and when you ask them, hey, what do you want to do? These people typically say it depends, right? And it does depend. I mean, because they're highly flexible. They're about let's get along. And these people, by the way, hate control. Can everybody in here kind of identify with one of those? Yeah, so these are different personality types. Now, if you happen to be the kind of person that is all about the outcome, all about making the decision as fast as we can, and if there's a mess that's created, that's okay, we'll clean it up later, right? If you happen to be one of those kind of people and you want a personal assistant, it's probably a bad idea to hire somebody exactly like you because you're going to have a bunch of missed meetings and missed telephone calls, and you're going to be disorganized because that's the way those kind of people are. If, on the other hand, you happen to be in human resources, right, or if you happen to be a nurse, a lot of those people are about, let me make sure everybody's doing good. So personality types come into play. And one of the things that I teach in my business mastery course, and some of you have seen it, is I teach you how to read other people. So that you if you want to influence somebody, what's the best way to do it? Find out what already influences them. That's the best way to do it. So figuring out this whole personality type thing is incredibly important, and it's not probably the skills that you've seen. I mean, I'm great with DISC and Myers-Briggs and all those. I'm good with all those, but I have another one that's very cool because it not only allows you to read other people, but also figure out how to influence them, not only when times are doing good, but also when times aren't doing so good. Because we have 2 different ways of acting. I don't know if you've noticed that. We have 2 different ways of acting. One when things are going well, one when things aren't going so well. So this idea here of getting some skills and tools that will allow you to kind of read other people and find people that have different skills than we do. That's kind of mistake number 2. Mistake number 3, I think this is a huge mistake. I think we tend to hire people based on proximity. We tend to hire people based on finding a warm body as opposed to finding the talent. Instead of going out and proactively searching for someone, we tend to hire based on whoever happens to come through the door or we hear about right at the time we identify the need. You take a look. You take a look at the people that are on your team. These could be employees, or this could be like your professional team, your lawyer, or your accountant, your financial planner. How did you find those people? And more often than not, the way you found them is not a result of a proactive search. It's a result of you were at a cocktail party. you were playing golf, or one of your hunting buddies, or something. You heard about something. You're at a cocktail party, and you kind of get to talking about how you're doing in the stock market, and all of a sudden somebody says, "Man, I got a great financial planner. I got a great stock picker that I've been using," and all of a sudden you go out and hire that person. It's all based on proximity, as opposed to doing a proactive search. And if you want the if you want the best talent, the reality is you're going to start doing some proactive searches. I think we forget the cost of making a mistake. I mean, the cost of making a hiring mistake is exceptionally high, way higher than what you think it is. Because by the time you figure out you've made a hiring mistake, the number of screw-ups that they've initiated is breathtaking. Then you got to go get rid of the person. That's expensive. Then you got to go out and find a new person. Then you got to train the person. You got more screw-ups. Holy cow, you're a lot better off finding a few good people and then paying the fool out of them, as complimenting them. I mean, I'm a big believer. If this is how much you're doing when you work for me, if this is how much you're doing and this is what the market demands, I'm going to pay you a little bit more. I always pay my people a little bit more than what they could go out and get if they decide to leave me. So I know if somebody leaves me, they're going to make less money. I think that's important. I'm going to tell you, you're not going to like this, but I'm going to tell you that if I hire you and then I find your resume is still on monster.com, I'll fire you. I'm not a believer in having affairs. I don't believe in that. I mean, either you want the job or you don't. If you want the job, good. Give me a chance. Get your stop looking. Stop looking. And let's see if we can make this thing work. I don't like it when people go out and they take a job with me and then they keep their resume out on monster.com and they're still looking around. Doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I realize what I said is probably not very popular, but that's kind of the way I do it. I'm not saying I'm doing it right. I'm just saying, hey, it works for me. So I think finding the talent, actually searching, recognizing what the costs are, doing some reference checks, intuition sometimes plays a part. And this is where I really kind of ask myself the question, how would I feel about this person working for my competition? Warren Buffett has got some non-negotiables when he hires people. His non-negotiables are different than mine, but I'm going to tell you what they are. He requires, when he hires somebody, that they have integrity, they be intelligent, and they be industrious. The 3 I's. They have integrity, they be intelligent, and they be industrious. And if they don't have the first one, he hopes to God they don't have the other 2. Because you talk about a problem. A problem is to hire somebody that's out of integrity, and they're smart, and they're a hard worker. Right? Now you got yourself a problem. I think that's good, but I think everybody's got to have non-negotiables. When you're hiring somebody, before you go into the interview process, I think it's a good idea to sit down and say, good, what am I unwilling? Which part of this am I unwilling to compromise on? What's the non-negotiables in this particular, for me, when I'm hiring for this particular position? Mistake number 4. I think mistake number 4 is a lack of clarity, and it's what I said a second ago. I think we tend to hire based on skills instead of hiring based on task. And if you're going to hire based on task, the reality is what you really want is you want something produced. You want an outcome. You want a result. But as I said before, the key to this whole thing is rules of the game. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about rules to the game because I think it is exceptionally important. And I can talk about culture a long, long, long time. Because to me, the role of leadership, the number one role of leadership is to create the culture in the organization. There is nothing more important. And I will tell you, when I buy businesses, which I do, I've done for a long, long time, and I got a little collection of them. I'm kind of like a little bitty, teeny, tiny Warren Buffett. I mean, little teeny, tiny. Only I didn't lose $30 billion this last year. That's a big difference between me and Warren. Of course, he had $30 billion to lose, so that's another difference between me and him. What I do, and when I buy a business, very first thing I do is I figure out what's the culture and what do I need to do to change it. and I can increase the earnings of a business by over 50%. 50% in 1 year by doing nothing other than changing the culture of the business. That's how important it is. That's how critical it is. There's a lot of smart people out there that, have written on the topic of, this whole business of leveraging off of other people. In fact, there's a lot of very smart people who have written about, one of their mantras is, get the right people on the bus. Have you heard this? If you want to leverage, get the right people on the bus. And I think that's a good idea, but the reality is I don't know the definition of the word right. Either do you after reading those books. You don't know the definition. I mean, what does that mean? The right color, the right height, the right age, the right experience, the right educational background, the right salary. What are we dealing with here when we say the word right? I look at some of the biggest organizations in the world, biggest companies in the world, and those guys have the resources to get the right people on the bus. How's that working so far? Not too well. You know why? Because they get the right people on the bus, and once everybody's on the bus, everybody whips out their switchblades, and they're stabbing each other in the back. They're clawing each other's eyes out. They're kicking each other in the groin. Why are they that's what's happening. You can get all the right people on the bus you want, but you're not going to get leverage if what people are doing is tearing each other apart. And the way that you set the culture is with the rules of how we're going to play. What are the rules of the game? I'm going to suggest to you, you got rules right now. You got rules in your relationships. You got rules in your businesses. You got rules in how you communicate with your family of origin, how you communicate with your kids or your best friend. There's rules of the game. The problem is most of the rules are unspoken. Therein lies the problem. They're unspoken rules of the game on how we're going to play. And then we wind up with somebody breaks the rules and we go, I'm going to give you a ticket. Right? That's what we do. Somebody breaks the rules and then we decide to give that person a ticket, and the reality is we have never bothered to communicate the rules to the person we're giving the ticket to. So now we frustrated the fool out of the ticketee, right? The person that we never bothered to tell them. You take a look at why most people that you've hired haven't worked out. And I guarantee you it's because the culture didn't fit. What you guys were about and what they were about were two different things. The reality is we have unmet expectations all the time, and most of the time our unmet expectations are a result of uncommunicated expectations. So I'm a big believer in, let's put it out there. Let's figure out what our rules are. First time I started working on this concept of rules of the game, it was years ago. And I said, if I'm going to have rules of the game, it's going to be things like, look, I want people who have a desire for excellence. I want people with a bias for solutions. I want people who are transparent. I want people with a sense of urgency. If you're not writing this down, you should, because these are important. Excellence and a bias for solutions and urgency and transparency. Those would be really good rules to have. I want somebody that is interested in a high-performance. I want a high-performance team. How about you? Do you want a high-performance team? Would you like to be on a high-performance team? I would. Everybody I know would like to be on a high-performance team. Do you know why we don't have high-performance teams? Because we don't have high-performance challenges. That's the problem. We're making it too easy. We're not pushing our people out of their comfort zone. We're not giving them something they got to reach for. Instead, we want to make sure that everybody's happy. I don't want anybody to be upset. I better make sure that all their goals are achievable, because otherwise I got to sit down and have an end of the year 360 review. I don't believe in annual reviews. I really don't. I have a review all year long. And when I see you doing something good, I'll tell you about it. When I see you're not doing something good, I'll tell you about that. Why in the world would I want to sit down with you once a year? I'm uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable. I got to find something to moan about. I'm going to correct you. Why go through that brain damage? I just don't get it. Why not be engaged enough so that this process is happening all year long? And that way you don't have to sit down and have this annual review. Annual reviews are great for big companies. They got to do it. But most of those guys are disengaged anyway. They got to have a system for all that stuff. I mean, as small business owners, that's what we are. I'm a small business owner. Probably you are too. The reality is what I need to have is I need to have this ongoing dialogue. In fact, when you stop and think about it, you want to know what the culture in your business is? You can find out in 30 minutes. Matter of fact, I could have dinner with anybody in here, you and your significant other, you and your mom, you and your kids. I don't care. Let me have dinner with you for 30 minutes, and I can tell you what the culture is within that unit, within that organization. Your culture, the litmus test on your culture is the dialogue. It's the dialogue that's happening. I'm going to tell you right now, most dialogues inside of most businesses are lousy. You got people trash talking each other. You got people sniping behind each other's back. You got gossiping. You got nobody raising their hand to help other people. Nobody even raising their hand when they need the help. The culture of most organizations sucks. And the reason, when I see a bad culture, I'm going to tell you, I see a bad leader. And when I see a good culture, I see a good leader. That doesn't mean people always like me, but it does mean they know what I expect. And that's part of my job, is to make sure that I communicate, here's what I want. So when I first started thinking about this whole thing around culture, you know, I kind of blazed through these big items, you know, this, I want a bias for excellence, and I want a sense of urgency, and I want somebody that, you know, is solution-oriented and not problem-oriented. I want transparency. When I first started writing this, I started to say the word trust. What I want is trust. And then, you know, I figured out I don't even know what that means. I don't know. I don't know how to define trust, but I do know how to define transparency. And that's what I want. I mean, I look at it from the standpoint of what would I want? I'd want a high-performance challenge. You know what I'd want? I'd want my people to be self-monitoring. Do you know what that means? That means that they're not waiting for mama or daddy to call them when they do something wrong. I mean, if one of my employees sees somebody else not doing it right, my expectation is the one who saw it ain't going to call me on the phone. Holy cow, now I got to get in the middle of it. I want the person who saw what went wrong to then go to the person who did it wrong and say, hey, that isn't the way we do it around here. That's not okay. That's not okay with me. You're hurting me. When you're not pulling your end of it, you're hurting me. That's kind of an entirely different ball game. The problem is, and this is the problem, is that, you know, that list I just came up with is a fairly good list if what you got is a bunch of Harvard MBAs that are working for you. And so I had to simplify that. I had to get something usable. And what I'm about to tell you, you will remember. You will remember. If I meet you 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now, and I say to you, what are Keith's rules of the game? You'll be able to tell me. Rule number 1, do the right thing. All right, now the question is, what's the definition of the word right? Right? Look, if you got to ask me if it's the right thing, chances are it's not. If you don't want your mama to find out about it, chances are it isn't the right thing. If you don't want to read about it on the front page of the newspaper, it definitely isn't the right thing. Do the right thing. That's number 1. I don't expect you to do it perfect. I expect you to do the right thing. Let's be fair. Do the right thing. Do the best you can. That's number 2. Number 1, do the right thing. Number 2, do the best you can. I'm not asking you to do whatever it takes. I'm not saying you got to be perfect. I'm just saying do the best you can. You know the difference. You know when you're pulling the train and when you're slacking and letting do the best you can. And number 3, show other people that you care. And of all of the rules that are out there, rules of the game, that one to me simplifies the structure more than anything else. It's something my people can remember, which is critical. I mean, if you're gonna leverage off of other people's time and other people's energy, you got to have some rules of the game. And one of the things that I think this is a mistake, I'm willing to be wrong, but I think it's a mistake. And that is to have a committee get together and create some kind of vision mission statement. And it's got real long, and it's got all these whereofs and therefores and here tos and all that. And you read the thing, and it's like 14 paragraphs long, and the problem is nobody knows what it says. Look, I'm in favor of mission statements if it's on a bumper sticker. But if it's going to be this huge frame thing that's going to be put in the employee break room, the whole reason to have vision and value statements and mission statements, the whole reason to have one is to tell people what to do when you're not around. Is that right? I don't know of another reason to have one. I mean, if I could be around all the time and tell you what to do, we wouldn't need that. I think you got to have something, but I was doing some consulting work several years ago for a very large company. It's Fortune, 500 business. And I was meeting with the senior executive team, including the CEO. And I met with them for an entire day. And we got to the end of the day, and the CEO asked me if I could follow her back to her office and have a quick meeting. And I said, of course. So we're walking down this enormous hallway, right? Pictures on the wall, Persian rugs, wood paneling. We walk all the way back to the end, very corner office. We got all the way back here to the very back. And right here on the wall, before we turned into her office, is their mission statement. And so I went and stood in front of the mission statement, and I called her back out in the hallway, and I said, what is this thing right behind me? She said, that's our mission statement. I said, good. What's it say? She said, it talks about our customers, and, it talks about our stakeholders, and it talks about, our values. And I said, no. I'm not asking you what it's about. I'm asking you what it says. She said, I couldn't tell you that. I said, I took it off the wall, I walked into her office, and I put it in the trash. I said, that's what that thing is worth. You know why I know that? Because nobody knows what the heck it says. How in the world are people going to be able to know what to do when you're not around unless you got something that's usable? At the end of the day, I'm okay if you want to do a vision statement. I'm okay if you want to do a mission statement. I'm good with the long ones. But for goodness sakes, let's get something boiled down so we have something that's usable. And that's really what creates the rules of the game is, what are your rules? I mean, and mine are, do the right thing. Do the best you can. Show other people that you care. Which one of those three do you think is most important? Number 3 is the most critical one. Do you know why we have such a hard time correcting other people? Do you know why we have such an incredibly hard time of calling it tight? It's because we don't care. If we cared, we'd do it. If we really cared, if we were engaged with our employees and they knew that we cared, then being able to say what needs to be said wouldn't be a problem. It's when you don't care that it's difficult. It's hard to administer the whipping if you don't care. Is that right? It's easier. It's never easy, but it's easier to say what needs to be said. Calling it tight. Calling it tight is critical if you're going to set the culture because you get what you tolerate. I'm going to tell you right now, if you decide to set the culture in your business, and it's one of the things that I talk a lot about in the 4-day MBA, because it's critical to growth. If you want to grow your business, you're going to have to figure out how to set the culture, how to change the culture. That's one of the tools that I have. So I'm giving you a brief overview. That's really what's been happening, with each one of these segments, is I'm trying to give you a brief overview so you kind of have a vision of what's possible. But if you need more, there's a way to get it. The reality is most people don't know how to set the rules of the game. Most people are unwilling to call it tight, and therefore most people wind up with a lousy culture, trading one employee for another one. This never-ending loop. Hiring someone, they work for a little while, and then they quit. Hire someone else, they're not working out. Good, I got to fire them. Here's what's going to happen if you decide to set the culture. If you decide to set the culture within your organization, your very best person, I mean your stud salesperson, the person in your organization who has the source code memorized in their brain. You're the most critical person in your business is going to be the person who decides this applies to everybody else, but not to me. You're always going to have one person who decides, and it's the best one, who decides this doesn't apply to me. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to want to make an exception for that one person. And that's okay. You can make an exception. You're never going to be successful at setting the culture as long as you make the exception. And after a while, you're going to bite the bullet, and you're going to say, you know what? I'm going to set the culture, and either this person who is critical to me either wants to get on board this train or they're going to have to leave. And I'm going to tell you right now, that'll be the best decision you ever make. I've done it. I've had it. I've seen it. I've done it so many times where the person I think I can't do without, I figure out how to do without them. Because the reality is they're destroying the culture, and the culture of the organization is critical to being able to successfully leverage. And that's what this segment has been about. How do I leverage? How do I get from niche to the next stage in my growth? And the next stage in your growth literally requires you to be able to leverage off of other people. You know, my people are all the time asking me, this is very common. They're saying, you know, how am I doing? How can I do better? How am I important? How am I appreciated? They're not saying it in so many words, but that's what they want to hear. They want to know, how am I important? You know, how am I doing? What can I do better? Am I appreciated? That's really the communication. I tell all my people when I hire them, I say, how many people here want a raise? And, you know, every single time, everybody raises their hand. And I say, all right, if that's what you want, do you know how to get one? Do you know how to get a raise? And they all kind of look at me, and then every once in a while somebody says something stupid like, you know, stay here for my 1-year anniversary. And I say, no, that ain't going to get you a raise. I don't do that. I don't give people merit raises. I say, look, here's how you get a raise. You do more than I'm paying you to do. If this is how much you're doing and this is how much I'm paying you, why in the world would I want to give you a raise? The way you make more money is you do more than I'm paying you to do. And I'm going to show you how you can make more money. In fact, not only do the people who work for me make a little bit more than what they can get from my competition, I also give them the ability to earn even more than that, an incentive structure. Our government has a very funky rule that I don't like too much. And the rule is that if I'm paying you, watch this, if I'm paying you to do this amount right here, this is what I'm paying you to do, and this is how much you do. Our government has told me that I can't reduce the amount you get paid. That irritates me. What they tell me is, hey, Keith, if this is how much you agreed to pay them, but this is only how much they're doing, you got to still pay them what you agreed to pay them. And so I don't like that too much, because my choice is either tolerate it or let them go. I got to have something where I can have some leverage. And the way I do that is I say, look, here's what I'm paying you to do right here. I'm going to pay you a little bit more than that. Anyway, and then I'm going to give you an incentive plan that will allow you to really crank up that, how much you can make. You can make, 20, 30, 40, 50% more. I mean, I love to have people, who I'm paying, $50,000 a year to. I mean, I tell all of them, I'd love it if you made $100,000 this year. I'm going to show you how you can do it. You deliver these kinds of results, and that's how much you're going to make. Because if they're making an extra 50, I'm probably making an extra 500. So I'm happy with that. I want you to do all you can to make as much as you can. So what I tell people is this. I said, look, this is what I'm paying you to do. Here's how much I'm going to pay you to do it. And then I'm going to give you an incentive. And then all of a sudden, if you decide to do something stupid and operate right down here, I can't get rid of you. But what I can do is take away your incentive. In other words, it's like being able to send an employee to the timeout box. That's what they call it today. When I was a kid, they call it getting grounded. So you take away some of their privileges. And I think it's very important to have, some sort of ability to get people's attention so they know, okay, good, there's not only a way for me to make more, but there's also really the possibility that I'm going to have that goodie taken away from me if I don't perform at a certain level. Suppose the person doesn't work out. Suppose the person you hire they just don't work out. They didn't work out because of unmet expectations. That's why they didn't work out. And usually it's because we weren't clear about the expectations. My experience is, not always, but 90% of the time, first loss is best loss. Once I figure out that the person isn't working, I can work to try to save them, or I can make the cut and move on. And my experience is, sometimes it works to work with them and try to save them. More often than not, if I care more about their job than they do, I got a mess. It's what I tell people when I teach. Some people come up to me and say, Keith, I don't know whether or not I should do it. Can you talk me into it? Nope, I can't talk you into it. Because the reality is, if I care more about your dreams and goals than you do, we got ourselves a mess. Either the people that are working with me, they want what they want the job, they want the income, and if you don't, and I gotta babysit you, it's probably not a fit. A lot of times, if somebody doesn't work out, it's a surprise to the person who isn't working out. If that's the case, shame on you. Shame on you. Somebody should not lose their job and it be a surprise to them that this happened. You need to have been coaching them and letting them know. I don't know about you. Is there anybody in here who likes feedback? I hate feedback. I love coaching. Feedback tells me what I did wrong. Coaching tells me what I can do better. That's a big difference. I'm a big believer in coaching. I'm a big believer in, good, what can I do different going forward? But if all somebody's going to do is give me a bunch of feedback and tell me what I did wrong, I don't enjoy that. Most people I know don't. So it should not come as a surprise, because theoretically, you've been giving them some coaching. They shouldn't go, holy cow, I'm losing my job. They ought to know, hey, this thing isn't working out. You got to get this thing turned around pretty quick. Otherwise, there's going to be a mess. I think when you have a mistake, I think one of the keys is to communicate that they're a good person, but it's a bad fit. In other words, there's no point in traumatizing and ruining somebody else's life. Losing a job is a hard thing. And you don't have to make somebody miserable. They're going to be miserable enough. Just let them know. Give them some coaching. You just say, you know what, you're a good person, but the reality is this is not a fit, and here's why. And not only here's why, but I've been coaching you on here's why for quite some time. Obviously, there's all kinds of legalities and witnesses and intellectual property that you need to take care of. Rules of the game are absolutely critical. At the end of the day, the rules of the game, kind of set the overall tone. It's the skin. It covers the entire thing. So to me, it's not about getting the right people on the bus. I think it's about getting good people on the bus and then putting together a culture that will allow them to flourish, that will allow them to become the best them that they possibly can be. Let them know that they're appreciated. I think if somebody says that getting the right people on the bus is the most important thing, their plan for market domination is brute force. And if your plan for being successful is sheer, raw, brute force, good, get the right people on the bus. The problem is, I don't know anybody that can afford the right people. I don't even know anybody that can define the right people. But I think there's a whole lot better strategy, and that is, let's not worry about the right people. Let's make sure that we get good people on the bus, and once they're on the bus, there's a culture that will allow them to succeed. The report card on leadership is the culture of the business, and the culture of the business is set by the rules of the game. And the reality is this: in your personal relationship, chances are, even if you don't have employees, in your personal relationship, chances are nobody's bothered to set the rules of the game. The reality also is that in most people's businesses, nobody's ever sat down and said, what are our rules of engagement? How are we going to play? And that's what rules of the game allow you to create, is that culture. I think bottom line, bottom line is this. Obviously, I can talk for a long, long time about the subject of hiring, the subject of culture, the subject of leveraging off of other people. Bottom line is this. I know a lot of business owners who say something stupid like, customers are number one. Every time I hear that, I shake my head and go, holy cow, are you kidding me? That's what you're saying? Customers are number one? Are you kidding me? No wonder your business isn't growing. No wonder you're having problems. You know what you're doing? You're telling the people you're leveraging off of that are going to provide the work, you're telling them, look, I don't know where you are, but you're not number one to me. You may be number 37, you may be number 84, you may be number 3, but you're definitely not number one. You know what the problem is with our employees is this. Write this down, never forget it. This is critical, what I'm about to say. Disinterested people deliver disinterested service. Disinterested people deliver disinterested service. Our problem is we got disinterested people. That's the whole problem. No wonder we're not growing. We're treating our employees like crap. Holy cow, these are the people that we're leveraging off of, and we're saying that customers are number one? Are you kidding me? Come on. Employees are number one. They always have been, they always will be. And if you'll create a culture where you care enough about your employees so that they know for a fact they're number one. I tell you, my employees and a customer gets into a squabble, I'm backing my employees. That customer has teed up a fight with the wrong people. I'm going to take care of my people. I got people work for me. You can imagine the kind of businesses I'm in. I mean, have you ever seen the movie The Green Mile? The Green Mile? Do you know that? What's that huge black guy? The guy's like 6'8" and built like a trunk of a tree, right? I mean, I got people working for me like that. They've been in and out of prison. They got all these issues, right? They got a third-grade education, and I walk in. These guys have a record. They got a rap sheet. I hire people directly out of prison. That's a primary source of us getting some of the employees, not all of them, but, you know, the workers. That's where we get a lot of employees. I mean, I'm a believer in giving people a second chance. I mean, for goodness sakes, where would I be without a couple well-timed second chances? Where would you be without some second chances? So I give these people a second chance, and I bring them in. I got guys that have spent more of their life in prison than out. And I'll walk into the building, into the facility, and they'll look at me and they'll say, I got you, Mr. Keith. That means I got your back. I look at them and I say, I get you. I get this guy who's built like the Green Mile guy. I mean, he is huge. He sweats. He's a sweaty guy. He works outside. Every time he sees me coming, he starts coming at me, right? And I'm going, oh, man. And this guy grabs me, and he envelops me with his arms. His arms are like this big because he's been pumping iron in prison for like 15 years. The guy is huge. He comes up and he wraps his arms around me. My head hits him kind of right here, right? And, man, my head gets all wet, and it's nasty, and he hugs me, and he kind of, you know, puts his head on top of my head, and he just hugs me and says, I got you. I got you. I said, I got you. I got you. Let go of me. I love you, man, but you don't smell good, right? I mean, these are great guys. They're great people, you know, men and women. They got a mess. But they know I love them. They know I'll take care of them. I'll give you one more example, just so you know what I'm dealing with. About 3 weeks ago, one of the employees of my company, it's an administrative employee in one of our businesses, she called me on the phone, and she said, Keith, a couple weeks ago, there was a problem with the cashiers, and they called me in, and there's something wasn't going through on the credit cards or something, and she said, I told the cashiers what to do, and apparently they didn't do it like I told them, and I just discovered it today, and there's an $842 shortfall. because the credit cards got all screwed up. There's an $842 shortfall. I listened, and I said, okay. She said, here's what we're going to do about it. She said, I've gone and talked to the 2 other cashiers, and we've figured out it's the 3 of our fault. And what we're going to do is over the next 2 paychecks, we're going to pay you that $842. They found the problem. They called me, and they're offering to pay for their problem. Now, that's a culture. That's a culture. And, you know, most of us would say, nah, that's all right. Go ahead. It's okay. Not me. You're right. You caused the problem. You pay for the problem. Now, having said that, they do pretty good on the flip side of this thing. I take care of my people. I'm a huge believer in that, and that's the key. The key to growth, the key to moving past this niche that most people find themselves stuck in. The key is being able to leverage off of other people. But I'm going to tell you, it doesn't have anything to do with getting the right people on the bus. It has to do with taking care of your employees and making them number one. Because disinterested people deliver disinterested service. Here's the hierarchy. Employees are the base. The culture is the base. You get your employees right, good. Then you can start taking care of your customers. You get your customers squared away because your employees are doing a great job. What you're going to do is you're going to be able to drive growth and drive profits. Profits and growth are a result of getting the people squared away. I got 3 rules. Do the right thing. Do the best you can. Show other people that you care. And if you'll implement those rules, I think you will see a stunning difference, not only in your people, but also in your growth. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.